Next up we have Dr. Ryosuke Okuno from the University of Texas at Austin to talk about an innovative technology that he's working on. Dr. Okuno?
Okay, thank you so much for the introduction. Hi everyone, I'm Ryosuke Okuno from the University of Texas at Austin, and I'm very excited to share highlights from our energy simulation industrial affiliate program on carbon utilization and storage. And our energy simulation program started in 2022, and since then we performed fundamental research on subsurface engineering with a primary focus on thermodynamics, chemistry, and geochemistry, in addition to engineered fluids of different kinds that are relevant to CCUS and the EOR. So we have developed new ideas that have a practical impact on oil field applications and also CCS for the past years. And I'm excited to share three major topics from our program. So I'm going to focus on three things. The first is a ketone solvent we use for EOR, and we have studied a very fundamental aspect of ketone-based EOR until a few years ago, and our focus is currently for field-scale deployment with several sponsors in shale and carbonates. And next in the list is the high-pressure nanobubble. So this has attracted a lot of attention for the past years. And there are many fundamental questions to be answered. So our focus is more fundamental aspect, but we do have some EOR project with sponsors. And the last one here is a main topic for my presentation here, which is Formate-based alternative carbon carrier technology. And we have a very fundamental research, but also practical deployment plan for this Formate-based CCS. So let's start by the first ketone-based EOR. So one of our PhD students, Mr. Sang-Hyun Ko, have a poster on this topic downstairs, and he's going to present the details of experimental methods and results that are very fascinating. So this is a very simple molecule, ketone. In particular, we studied the 3-pentanone for the past years. And this is a slightly polar molecule that is not surfactant, it's not ionic. It's slightly soluble in brine, typically below 2 to 2.5 weight% in brine. And this is completely miscible with oil. So this asymmetric solubility in water and oil makes it very attractive in EOR application. And ketone is very stable in brine, even at the high salinity beyond the 250,000 ppm and the temperature beyond 100 degrees Celsius. And we successfully tested the EOR performance of ketone EOR for this harsh environment. And basically, it's a wettability alteration agent that changes the wettability of a rock from strong oil wet to strongly water wet very effectively. So one of the recent results is about shale application, the well treatment in shales. So we, in this particular case, we tested the reservoir shale cores of preserved wettability, and along with a PVT experiment that quantify the partition behavior of ketone into liquid phases, we did various flooding or soaking experiment. So this particular figure is about spontaneous imbibition result for 2 shale cores, and each case had 2 stages. The first stage is injection brine, just ordinary pond water at low salinity, and core was immersed in this ordinary low salinity brine. And after reaching a plateau in oil recovery, we switched aqueous solution to 3-pentanone solution. And you see massive rapid recovery response after the switch. And this is because of a very strong wettability alteration capability of this very simple oxygenated solvent. And we did a history matching, and we are now focused on large-scale simulation studies for particular formations for companies. And Sang-hyun is going to compete at the SP paper contest next month at the ATC to represent the UT Austin on this topic. So that's very exciting news. And next one, high pressure nanobubble dispersion. So one of our postdoc fellows, Dr. Daniel Fuentes Ibarra, have a poster on this topic downstairs. So basically, with the high pressure nanobubble dispersion, we can increase CO2 content in aqueous media by a factor of 1.5 to even 1.8 with respect to CO2's inherent solubility in brine, especially for high pressure. And these nanoscale bubbles enable supersaturation in surrounding water phase, so that's the main reason for this enhanced gas content in this case. And as I said, this topic has increased the popularity in academia and also industry. And we presented several oil recovery experimental results for the past several years. And this is one of the figures from SP IOR paper 2024. And I also presented this last year at the Energy Simulation Summit. So in this case, we did a half and puff with CO2 nanobubble for tight sandstone with live oil for high temperature pressure. And we compared with ordinary CO2 half and puff. And as you see here, nanobubble case resulted in systematically greater oil recovery compared to CO2, even though it used less CO2. So we have several successful results like this, but a fundamental question remains to be answered. For example, how do we characterize this fluid, very complex fluid under high pressure? So we developed innovative systematic experimental procedure coupled with a thermodynamic model. And in this particular case, we have CO2 nanobubble in NaCl brine under high pressure, and CO2 gas content is enhanced by a factor of 1.7 to 1.8 in comparison to solubility of CO2 in the brine. And coupled with a thermodynamic model, we can quantify this high pressure nanobubble sample. For example, we can calculate the bubble capillary pressure and number density of CO2 bubble for respective pressure. And in this particular case, you see radius of bubbles tend to go down as the system pressure goes up. And accordingly, capillary pressure goes up with increasing system pressure. And also, our model enabled us to calculate how much CO2 resides in the system as bubbles and how much of CO2 dissolved in the water at the supersaturated state. And number density on the rightmost column, you see the number density of 10 to the power of 12 to 10 to the power of 14 bubbles per cc of sample. So these numbers are much greater than the data reported in the literature for low pressure open system. So these are very new data, and we are working to write a paper based upon these results. And Daniel is going to present more details of the procedure behind this result in his poster session. So now let's move on to the main topic, alternative carbon carrier technology. So in the conventional CO2 management processes, CO2 is a carbon carrier. So in this diagram, CO2 is captured from different sources. And this catch and release process of CO2 is very energy intensive. And after capturing CO2 this way, CO2 has to be compressed for efficient transportation and the injection into subsurface formation to increase the density of CO2 or carbon. And this transportation and injection is very energy intensive, and also for subsurface processes, the EOR using CO2 has a challenge of poor sweep efficiency because mobility of CO2 is high and viscosity is low, subject to strong buoyant forces. And also for CCS application, CO2 trapping mechanism has to be secure for long term, and steel corrosion due to acidic environment is a concern, especially after the recent news from Illinois Basin Decatur project, CO2 leakage. So these challenges motivated us to study alternative carbon carriers, not to compete with the CO2 pathway in a traditional CO2 management, but to complement our technology for CCS or CCUS. So one of the particular CO2 carbon carrier technology is based upon Formate species. And the Formate, as shown here on the right, it consists of one carbon atom, two oxygen atoms, and one hydrogen. So this can be generated from CO2 in different ways, for example, electrochemical process. And Formate species are very soluble in brine. And it has been widely used in oil field operations for well completion fluids and walkover fluids because of its good HSE profiles. And cost is not very high. Sodium formate is around 10 to 20 cents per pound. And we have studied fundamental chemical and transport properties of formate species for past years. And this photo shows a snapshot of our solubility test for low temperature atmospheric pressure for sodium formate. So in these particular conditions, the sodium formate solubility is around 9 mole per liter. So this means that because one formate carries one carbon, so 9 mole per liter here means this sample contains 9 moles of carbon per liter of sample. So this carbon density 9 mole per liter is close to CO2 carbon density at the subsurface condition for some CCS project. So we can carry a lot of carbon in this form, aqueous form, even at standard conditions. And we studied EOR application of sodium formate solution as mobility control and wettability alternation. And also we have studied CO2 capture and conversion into formate species using electrochemical process in our research group. And currently this technology is rated as TRL of 6. And some sponsors are interested in application of formate-based CCS, especially for shallow formations, because this is where CO2 density is low. Therefore, CO2 is subject to more buoyant forces and viscosity less, increasing the mobility. And on the right, you see CO2 molar density, mole per liter, in pressure temperature space. And I'm plotting subsurface temperature pressure conditions for existing CCS project. So you see those temperature pressure conditions from a CCS project are situated beyond, above the extension line of CO2 vapor pressure, because this is where CO2 density is high. But below this extension line of CO2 vapor pressure, CO2 behaves like a gas. So it is subject to strong buoyant forces, and also structure trapping is more challenging in shallow formation. So this is where formate species can give a potential opportunity of CCS, because carbon density is still high under this condition and higher than the CO2 carbon density. And CO2, carbon being in the water in the form of formate enables conformance control opportunity in EOR application. So CO2 has a very high mobility and subject to buoyant forces after being injected. So oil displacement tend to be not efficient, right? So therefore, here I'm showing yeah, so the oil displacement process is much more stable when we displace oil by aqueous media like a sodium formate solution while carrying carbon. So some of the result in our recent formate research was featured in current, most recent JPT article on the right side. So in this particular paper, we compared 3 cases. The first is continuous injection of CO2. And the second is a CO2 WAG. And the third one is another WAG, but water slag was replaced by sodium formate solution. So between the first two, continuous CO2 injection is better in terms of CO2 storage, but worse in oil recovery. compared to WAG. But the third one, the formate-based WAG, has a dual benefit of enhanced oil recovery and enhanced carbon storage, partly because formate is a carbon carrier while enhancing sweep efficiency. So you can find the JPT article from this QR code. And those simulation results are interesting, but actually do not cover complex rock-fluid interaction when formate is injected into the formation. For example, we presented the oil recovery result by formate solution injection several years ago. In this case, we made a fracture in carbonate cores, and we flooded this fractured core by first water, and after reaching a plateau, we switched the injection water to sodium formate solution. So in this flow configuration, because the water tend to bypass the matrix and the oil in it, the first brine stage resulted in only 13% oil recovery. But after switching to sodium formate, you see clear response in oil recovery. So this simple molecule originated from CO2 can achieve enhanced water imbibition for better oil recovery. And of course, this imbibed water carries carbon in the form of formate. So this kind of a geochemical mechanism of sodium formate-based EOR is not captured in reservoir simulation-based studies yet. So this represents the research opportunity in reservoir simulation technology in this domain. And another important application of sodium formate was found in CO2 mineralization topic. So CO2 mineralization has attracted a lot of attention for mafic and ultramafic formation because they carry a lot of multivalent cations, such as magnesium and calcium. So these mineralization reaction pathways consist of two main processes. The first step is dissolution of metals that releases calcium and magnesium, those divalents that are going to be reacted with CO2. And the second step is precipitation of secondary carbonate minerals. So this is where metal ions are going to react with carbonate originated from captured CO2. And the first step of mineral dissolution is viewed as a rate-limiting step, and partly because this step tends to form what's called a passivation layer after dissolving the surface of the rock. And formate species was found to enhance this first step very, very significantly by using a different dissolution mechanism. So here I'm showing two cases. First case, we immersed the basalt sample into carbonated water. So this case represents a traditional CO2 mineralization process where CO2 dissolves in water and a proton is attacking rock surface to dissolve calcium and magnesium. This is called a proton-induced dissolution. And the second case is enhanced mineral dissolution by sodium formate. So this is where basalt is immersed in sodium formate solution in carbonated water. So in this case, dissolution is not because of proton, rather it's because of ligand, the formate ligand, making complexes with divalent cations. So ion analysis indicates that the second case resulted in much greater dissolution and available for CO2 precipitation as carbonates. And this TEM analysis shows that the dissolution layer, amorphous layer rich in silica, is much thicker for the second case because for the first case, protons have to migrate into rock matrix, but the rock matrix is inherently alkali in those basalt and other mafic rock, ultramafic rock formation. Their pH is high, so proton transport into matrix is hindered by this inherent pH gradient. But for the second case, formate does not suffer from this inherent alkali environment in the rock. So it goes deeper and reacts more to release calcium and magnesium from rock surface. So one note here is that this term perseveration layer is a little bit confusing because surface is not protected by anything. Rather, it's a transport problem. And as I said, the formate transport is not hindered by this amorphous layer because it doesn't feel the pH gradient, unlike conventional proton-induced dissolution. So I went through 3 major topics, and with that, I would like to thank all the sponsors, and I would like to thank Energy Simulation for hosting us in this exciting event. And with that, thank you so much, and I would be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Dr. Okuno. Questions from the floor? Well, let me try one. I thought some time ago I saw you have a slide about the cost, additional cost of Formate, and what may make it work.
So in this particular case, featured in JPT, so the cost for generation Formate is covered mostly by increased oil recovery compared to WAG case. Sorry, the CO2 case. So
you have incremental oil beyond the CO2 EOR.
Yes. So this Formate alternating gas injection recover more oils than continuous CO2 injection, and that incremental oil with respect to CO2 injection can cover most of the Formate cost.
Right. Now you had a core flood with water flood and then Formate CO2 flood. Do you have a base case where you have water flood and then CO2 flood and then the Formate CO2 to show that that's the case?
Great question. So we did this the alternating injection of sodium Formate CO2 on the simulation-based study, but not yet implemented in lab scale experiments. So that's a great question. We would like to work on it.
Okay. Now, is the Formate reusable? Would you separate it once it's produced?
Yeah, so it's ordinary brine, and then once it's produced, we can detect it quite easily using analytical method. And separation Formate alone from brine might be a challenge, but there's no reason to not being able to recycle it for re-injection.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? Dr. Apostolos, Kansas. Oh, sorry. Ani, you go ahead.
I go first. Okay. I would like to know more about the mechanism behind these processes that you are bringing up. Why do you think you get that kind of extra recovery? And is it as expected, or is it lower or higher? What is the critical parameters for the process?
So I presented 3 topics. Which one specifically?
All of them.
All of them. Okay, great question. Okay, so we still have 7 minutes, right? So, yeah, so ketone, we published maybe more than 10 papers. And then Sang-hyun is going to present his poster, especially for this one. But basically, it's a wettability alternation.
So,
and
yeah,
IFT is not altered, unlike surfactant.
So why are you seeing this extra oil recovery? Is it just by the wettability alteration?
So here, the wettability alteration, while not changing interfacial tension, we keep a high capillary pressure and changing wettability only. So that makes a rapid water imbibition from fracture to matrix. And in this particular EOR method, it's called EOR here, but rather it can be viewed as a well treatment where we change wettability of rock near the wellbore. So we hopefully change the relative permeability in favor of oil production for long term. And if you like,
Continue.
so this is much more complicated. So I'd rather wait for maybe 1 more year and then come here again and present a more detailed result
Yes.
of oil recovery.
That's fine.
Okay, take it offline then. But basically, you said wettability is further reduction in the SOR, residual oil saturation.
Or it's increasing oil mobility
Oh, okay.
by wettability alteration.
Okay. So yeah, let's take that offline, and we're going to have another question
Yeah,
here.
sure.
Thank you for the presentation. Can you go to the slide with the core, the cracked, fractured core? So you start with a core which is complete, and at what point do you fracture it? When it's dry?
So after saturating it with oil,
Okay.
we fractured without
Perfect.
using water. Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And so there is no connate water there.
We did several cases. Yeah,
Okay.
some cases we had initial water, and some other cases we didn't. And presence of initial water helped actually water imbibition better
Right.
than the other cases.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Okay, question from Bob.
A very nice discussion there. I got a follow-up question from Andrews regarding the separation of the formate. So there's the question that the oil field activity is recovering it potentially, but would there be any residual oil in the oil that is ultimately sent to a refinery? Because they have strict requirements on what contaminants they can tolerate. So is there any concerns about any formate going into the refinery systems?
So in all these 3 cases, 3 topics, or okay. So ketone case is the most relevant because it's percentage into oil, and so we apply ketone at or below solubility in injection brine. So usually it's below 2.5 weight%, and we apply it in half and puff mode in shale. And large-scale numerical simulation indicates the amount of ketone in the produced oil is very low. So operators do not have a major concern for the downstream. So that's exactly the question we received from field operators. So.
Okay. Yeah, that's time. Thank you again, Dr. Okuno, for your presentation.